Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy here, and I've got a little bit of a rant video here. A couple of weeks ago, Ritchie Blackmore made some comments on Joe Satriani. So if you haven't heard anything about this, Blackmore made comments that while he thought that Satriani was a brilliant player, he thought that Satriani didn't really play with any soul. He never found Satriani playing any wrong notes, and that kind of bothered him. And obviously, in the days that followed, this kind of brought back that whole conversation about field players versus technique players. And I gotta say, this is probably one of the dumbest conversations that I have ever heard. And it happens all the time. And I find that usually it's just rock musicians who engage in it. And it doesn't make any difference whether they're amateurs or professionals. There's always this division between field players and technique players, as if you have technique, you don't have feel, and if you have feel, you can't have technique, and you can't have both. And it's kind of ridiculous. So my hope with this is that we can kind of start getting the ball rolling to put this discussion to bed, because in my opinion it's really kind of dumb. So there's probably about 100 points that I could make on this particular subject, but I'm going to try to keep it down to just 3. All right. So the first one is, every technique player plays from the heart. Okay, it all comes down to having an idea, having a feeling that you want to share with an audience. I mean, you got to think about this for just a second. If you're going to spend all of those hours developing technique, it's got to be for some sort of emotional benefit, you know. Even if the idea that the musician is trying to convey is a little bit more intellectual on some level, there's still the need. That's an emotional need to share it with an audience and present it to people that might get something from it. So every technique player plays from the heart. It all comes from the need to express something, okay? On the other side of the coin, all of your feel players play with their head. All right, they think about what they're doing. There's really no way around this, okay? Blackmore made other comments about Jimi Hendrix and how Jimi Hendrix would be searching for notes, you know, and he'd be searching for the note. Where's that note? Where's that note? And when he found it, it would be really amazing. Well, that implies that there's a critical element going on in Hendrix's mind when he's playing, because he's got to play a wrong note. He's got to be able to identify it as a wrong note. And he's got to play another one. Nope, that's not it either. Oh, there it is. So he's got to make a judgment call. Yeah, he's doing that on the fly, and maybe that's really cool, and that creates an awesome emotional experience for himself, the band, everybody in the audience. But he's still thinking about it, okay? Anytime any of those guys make a decision about how they're going to structure their song, or even writing the song, anytime they have to make a choice about anything, they're using their heads, okay? Yeah, it's got to make them feel good, but they've still got to evaluate whether or not the choice that they've made is going to work. So technique players use their hearts, and field players use their heads. It's one and the same, okay? They're both connected. There's just different ways, okay? So that's point number 1. Point number 2, you may have heard this expression before, the musician's musician. I gotta say, I hate this term. It always seems to come from the field players camp, and it always seems to be kind of a backhanded way to show a little bit of respect for the technique players and the fact that they've dedicated a lot of time to their craft, but it always implies that the only people that technique players are trying to impress are other musicians. Now think about that for just a second. You become a musician and you spend countless hours developing your craft and learning about music and practicing and improvising and all these wonderful things, and the only people that you want to reach are other musicians who are doing the same thing. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, okay? What is much more likely is that, actually, you know what? No, let me back that up for a second. There is one occasion, I can think of one occasion, where a musician is looking to impress another musician. And that's when he's auditioning for a gig. So yes, when Mike Mangini was auditioning for Dream Theater a few years ago, yes, he was trying to impress the guys in Dream Theater because he wanted the job, okay? After that, what do? They go out to put on the best show they possibly can. And I will guarantee you this, probably 80% of the audience at a Dream Theater show has no freaking clue what a Phrygian dominant scale is. But they recognize that sound and they love it when they hear it, okay? So you can't just say that everybody at a Dream Theater show is, oh, they're all musicians and blah, blah, blah. No, I don't think they are. I know plenty of people who are not musicians who love Dream Theater. They just love the sounds. And that's really what makes the music go round. It's not about trying to impress other musicians. Like I said, if you're looking for a gig, yeah, you're trying to impress other musicians. Other than that, no. You're trying to connect with an audience in a language that you are fluent in, that you think other people will understand. Now that leads me to the third point. This is going to be the last one that I go through here, at least in this video. I don't know, maybe I'll do more. There are many ways to express an emotion. Okay, let's take the feeling of exhilaration, for example. Okay, let's say, I'll illustrate this by saying, let's say you're at Fenway Park, okay? You're watching the Red Sox play and they hit a fly ball and you catch it. Now I think for any fan that would be an exhilarating moment, okay? Now, just to demonstrate two extremes, one very simple way to share that exhilaration with all of the people in the stands, just a really simple, yeah! Oh my God! You know, we've all seen this guy at games and he's jumping up and down, maybe even falls down on the seats, but it's so easy to see that this guy is really excited about having caught that ball. But let's say there's another example. Let's say somebody else catches that ball. And a lot of the same stuff happens, right? Ball comes up, he catches it, woohoo! Right? But instead of completely jumping down and falling all over himself, maybe there's a slightly different response. Maybe as he gets down and he gets the ball and he's like, oh my God, can you believe what just happened? My grandfather took me my first game here at Fenway and he caught a fly ball and I think we were right over there in that section. I did the same thing. It was my first game as an adult and isn't that amazing? Right? Now clearly you can tell by the expression on his face that he's excited, but he wants to convey the history of all of this. There's a reason for that excitement. You know what I mean? And you need vocabulary just to tell that story. You need vocabulary, and people need to understand that vocabulary, all right? Now, the first one, you don't really need a whole lot of vocabulary to shout, yay, and woo at the top of your lungs. People are going to get that, okay? But for the other one, to convey anything more about that feeling of exhilaration, you need vocabulary, okay? In music, that means scales. That means technique. That means being able to call upon this stuff and to tell that story. I would say that the first baseball fan is kind of akin to, say, Kurt Cobain. You know, he's got a very small, a very small musical vocabulary, but he knew how to get his point across. Okay, a lot of people loved the music of Nirvana. He was a very effective guitar player. Okay, now for somebody like Satriani or Vai, or John Petrucci or whoever, these guys need more vocabulary to express their thoughts, their feelings, and their ideas. They need that. It's one of those things where, like I said, the audience isn't going to know the exact scales that anybody's using. They're not necessarily going to be blown away by the technical prowess of a musician, but they get the feeling. I mean, there is something about super fast scale runs that creates a sense of excitement or creates a sense of franticness or panic, right? All of these different emotions can be conveyed in something that's very fast and technical, you know, as the way it's described by most of the players in the field player camp, right? Most of those guys be like, oh, it's just too technical. No, it's not. It actually conveys something. When I hear Satriani, for example, play Summer Song, when that CD comes on in my car, that song comes on in my car, for example, all I want to do is floor it. I don't care what scales he's using. I'm a guitar player. I've been playing for 30 years. All I want to do is I want to hear the 4 cylinders in my Toyota Corolla scream, right? That's all I want to do is just floor it. That song just is so filled with energy That's what I want to do. It creates an emotional response. It does that for any listener who appreciates that music. So I could go on forever on this subject, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stop it right there. In my opinion, this whole conversation of do you play from your head or do you play from your heart is complete BS. All players use both, all right? They use both, and they use the vocabulary that they need to convey their ideas. Sometimes that vocabulary is small, sometimes that vocabulary is large, but they've got an idea, there's a feeling that they want to express, and they use the vocabulary that they need to do that. So rather than try to debate whether or not a player is using their head or their heart, what you really need to be thinking about is, what are they trying to express, and are they effective at it? Now, you might not get what they're trying to express, and that's fine. You know, maybe you got to look at an interview and see if there's something that the artist is saying about a particular piece of music. Maybe you won't get it. That's fine, you know. Tell you the truth, I never got Nirvana's music. You know, I really didn't. It didn't speak to me. My life and my interpretation of life didn't parallel with Kurt Cobain's in the slightest. So the music never appealed to me. But like I said, I have to respect his impact on the world. His music touched a lot of people. You know, in my youth, I ragged on him quite a bit. But as I got older and I realized, I was like, man, you know what? He's a very effective guitar player. Very effective guitar player. He's a very effective songwriter. He's a very effective singer. Regardless of whether or not the technique is there, he touched his audience, right? That music made an impact. And the thing is, Satriani's music makes an impact on his audience, an emotional impact to his audience. So head players use their heart players use their head. This concept of a musician's musician is kind of BS, because the only time they're trying to impress each other is when they're trying to win a gig. And because there are so many different ways to express an emotion, you need a range of vocabulary. So that's what I got on this subject. Leave me a comment below. Tell me if you think that I'm onto something. Tell me if you think that I'm full of shit. It doesn't really make any difference. I don't mind keeping the discussion alive a little bit, but only in so much as we can bury it, because it really is stupid, man. Musicians are out to touch people's lives, and how they choose to do it is a different story. If you don't want to learn your scales, then don't learn your scales. It's not that big a deal. There's no reason to rag on somebody else who did. You know, many of my favorite players don't have much of a grasp of music theory, and that's fine, because their music is still awesome. Okay, many of my other favorite artists do have a grasp of music theory, and their music is awesome. So it's not, this really isn't a discussion that we should be having, you know. If y'all feel threatened by people who know their scales, well, either learn your scales or just realize that you have a place in this world too, regardless of whether or not you know all of that stuff. So anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Leave me comments below. Let me know what you think, and I will see you again in the next video.